It is so wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see you here, and so glad that each and every one of you are here this morning. Those who are our guests, we are glad to have you here and want you to know that. In no uncertain terms, we are so glad that you are here. We're glad that you are here and have chosen to worship God with us this morning. I love singing about heaven. Sing to me of heaven. When you sing those words and you think of all the wonders of that place that awaits the faithful. Just a few moments, we're going to be looking at some of the parables in Matthew chapter 13 to talk about the kingdom. And one of the observations we're going to make, and I'll go ahead and give you a hint here, is that the kingdom that's present now is the kingdom that will be then. And so when we sing about heaven, we're singing about that place that we as God's people will be. It's already been announced this afternoon is our Bible Bowl Awards and Devotional, and we're looking forward to that. That's at 2 o'clock here, and I know the ladies have been making preparations for the fellowship that follows, and I know that the other congregations will be here as we celebrate the end of Bible Bowl season and give out the awards to those that have done so well. And everyone has done well, but of course there are always those who do better, and we're glad that we're able to recognize those. Looking forward to this afternoon for the devotional part. We have Josh Posey, who's here with us this morning, and he'll be speaking this afternoon. And for that, and we're supposed to have somebody else, Andrew Coker, I think, will be here this afternoon to lead the singing for the young people. And looking forward to that afternoon, and I hope that you can come and be a part of that. And I know our young people will want to be here for that. I want to remind us of where we have been. The last few weeks, or this year, we have been looking at the whole, going through or reading through the New Testament in an order that kind of is random, I suppose, but as we go through it and read through these books of the Bible together, we're kind of on the same page, physically, literally, and the idea that we're all studying the same thing as we read together. Now, last week, we looked at the idea of the kingdom and the fact that Jesus came in Matthew chapter 4, verse 17. It says Jesus came and he said, and he preached, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. In fact, in this week's reading, in Matthew chapter 10, when Jesus appoints those that we will know as his apostles, in Matthew 10, verses 2 through 4, we have that wonderful list there of those of Peter and Andrew, James and John, and Matthew and Thomas and Bartholomew and the rest. As we look at that list, you begin about verse 5, and Jesus sent them on a mission. He sent them on a mission, as you read through verse 7, to proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Not only was that something Jesus preached, it was what he told his disciples to preach. So as we talk about that kingdom, I want to review some things that we ended with last week to kind of establish what this kingdom is. First of all, this kingdom is where God rules. In that model prayer in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 10, Jesus says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. The kingdom is where God is sovereign, where he rules. We also noted last week that the kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. Jesus says when he stands before Pilate, it's recorded in John chapter 18, about verse 36 or so. He records that Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my disciples fight. But my kingdom is not of this world. Jesus' kingdom, the kingdom that he proclaimed, the kingdom that he established, is a spiritual kingdom where God rules. Not only that, there's something else interesting. We go to Colossians 1 and verse 13, we find out that Paul says that we have been translated out of the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of his Son. It's a present physical reality in the church. So we have a kingdom that is God's rule, we have a kingdom that is spiritual, and we have a kingdom that is a present reality where God rules his people, his kingdom, the church. And then, to just kind of confuse things a little bit, to put all these four concepts together, not only is this a God-ruled spiritual kingdom that's present, it's also future. How can something be both present and future? Well, we struggle with that because we're limited to the physical. Because we think in a physical sense. Yet there is an essence in which the kingdom is both physical and spiritual, and in essence in which it is both present and future. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 24, verse 30, we find that at the end, Jesus will deliver the kingdom to the Father. So there's a point at which Jesus says, here is your kingdom. You go to Revelation 21 and you read about that bride, that kingdom in a heavenly sense. So the future aspect of the kingdom. So let me see if I can say this right. I wrote it down so that I wouldn't forget how to say it, because the way I read it was really good. The kingdom is this. It's present where men allow God to rule their hearts, minds, and spirit. The kingdom is present when men allow God to rule, and where men allow God to rule. The kingdom is spiritual in that God rules hearts, minds, and spirits, and not a kingdom with borders. I want you to think with me. Where are the borders of God's kingdom? Physically speaking, they don't exist. You remember back a few months ago when we had our spiritual emphasis Sunday, or our mission emphasis Sunday? Remember what we were able to do? We were able to have Richard Harp live from Scotland on the screen talking about the work of the kingdom there while we were here. See, there's no border. There's no physical border to the kingdom. It's wherever God rules. So it's spiritual in that sense. It's present as the church of his Son. It's future when it's culminated when Christ returns. It's future when we see that new heaven and new earth of 2 Peter chapter 3. It's future when those of the church, it's the future experience of those of the church who submit to God. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount from last week's reading in Matthew chapter 7, about verse 21, and that everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So those of us who are faithful will experience that future aspect of the kingdom. Now turn with me to Matthew chapter 13. Matthew chapter 13. I want us to see this kingdom and the value that Jesus places on this kingdom. Now in Matthew chapter 13, you'll remember from your reading that there were a lot of parables in this passage. And these parables had to do with the kingdom. Let's look real quickly. The parable of the sower. He went out and sowed seed in the field, in the hearts. And here we see the beginning of this kingdom. Of the parable, of the purpose of the parable. So verse 18, the parable of the sower explained. The parable of the weeds. The parable of the mustard seed and the leaven. Prophecy and parables. Parables of the wicked, or parables of the weeds explained. And then we come to verse 44. And we have this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hid in a field, in which a man found and covered up. Then in his joy he goes and sells all that he has and he buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it. Oh, there's something interesting here to me. Both of these men, both of these people, when they find this treasure or this pearl of great price, they both sell all that they have. They sell everything that they have. And I also find it interesting that one of these men, one of these people, he's not looking for the kingdom. He's not looking for this treasure. He's just looking at land. And he's buying land, and when he buys this, or when he looks at this land, he sees this land, and he's surveying the land, and he finds in this land, accidentally finds in this land a treasure. And so then he goes, this is the land I want. And he buys it. Because when he buys it, he buys the treasure that's in the land. He sells all that he has because it's worth it. Then you have the second one. The second one is a man who's looking for something of value. He's the treasure hunter. He knows that there is a pearl out there somewhere that's worth a lot. And he's collecting all these pearls. And maybe he has a number of them, but he's still looking for that one. And he finds it. And he sells all the other pearls and all the other treasures that he has so he can buy that one pearl. For those of you that collect baseball cards, it would be like finding that one baseball card that's worth everything. And you sell all the other cards to get that one. Because it's that valuable to you. Wouldn't that be worth it? In that sense. I was watching something the other night on television, and I don't remember the show. I just kind of caught part of it. There was this man who had well, John Lennon had visited his house one time in a rage and broken all of this man's valuable gold records. Now, think what you want of John Lennon, but he did it. And he apologized by signing a lamp and something personalized to this man. You know what this man said? All those gold records, they're nothing compared to this signature. To him, that was valuable. I don't know if that would be valuable to you. I don't know. I know Rhonda Smith loves John Lennon, so I know that she would, and Paul McCartney or, any of the Beatles. So that would be valuable to her. Maybe, some of you are going, John who? Sorry. Or young. So maybe there are certain things that are valued, and it's worth everything else. Maybe there's something in your mind that you're picturing, and that's what Jesus is trying to get us to see when he tells these parables. Here is something of extreme value. It's a kingdom of great value. When we look at the kingdom in the four aspects that we did, and we notice that it's physical and present in the church, and it's spiritual in the church, and it's spiritual in the future in heaven when everything's culminated, how do we place value on that? What is the church kingdom worth to you? What is heaven, the kingdom, worth to you? Because when we talk about this kingdom of great value, we are talking about both aspects. A lot of times we focus on the idea of the kingdom of heaven in that future sense. And yes, heaven will be worth it all. We even sing that, right, in so many words. Surely heaven's worth it all. But what about the church kingdom? What's the value of the kingdom? Is it worth everything? I want to look at just about 3 or 4 things that will help us see the value of the kingdom. So going from this text and going to some other places, I want us to see the value of the kingdom.